Hi, good evening and welcome to our City Spotlight event. Thank you all for joining us. We're running this series monthly on the first Thursday of each month, and the purpose is really to showcase health innovations, hear about some of the newest technologies and processes, both from within our hospital and without, and to get some insight into the experience of the people working to create those innovations and bring them into healthcare. So last month we featured Dame Jessica Ennis-Hill, which is very exciting, speaking about her hormone intelligence app, and the founder of Patchwork, which is a digital solution to the health staffing crisis. We also spoke with the director of the high intensity theatre lists here at Guy's and St Thomas, who found a really innovative way of significantly tackling the long surgical waiting lists that a lot of us are experiencing. That event was fantastic. It was a really enjoyable evening. And so I really do recommend you find it on our YouTube channel where you can watch it back. But we have a great panel of guests again this evening who I'm really excited to be speaking with. I'll kick off first of all, though, by introducing myself. I'm Sarah Williams. I am a GP in South London. This year I'm doing a fellowship in clinical innovation here in Guy's and St Thomas Hospital. I work directly with Dr Nadine Hachach-Haram, the Director of Innovation and Partnerships here at CITI. And most of you will have seen on the flyers that we were expecting her to be here this evening. She usually hosts this series, and you probably received an invite from her, but she unexpectedly had to be away this evening, so I'm stepping in last minute to cover for her this month. So for those of you who did join last month, thanks for coming back. We're really glad you joined us again. We hope this series will be different each month and that you'll want to keep joining. But for those who are joining for the first time and maybe who don't know Guy's and St Thomas or CITI, let me just give you some background on it. So Guy's and St Thomas is one of the largest NHS trusts. It's based in South London. It's got an amazing view of the Big Ben and the Eye and Westminster. But that geography is not only lovely, it also offers a richly diverse population of health patients. So we have approximately 8 million patients we serve along with our KHP partners and around 23,000 staff as well. We have world-class capabilities. We have a great AI centre which hosts the UK's first fellowships in clinical artificial intelligence. We have an excellent cancer centre which you'll be hearing more about, and there's several others. But the thing that creates the best opportunity for adopting change in the hospital is our exceptionally talented and motivated staff base, and I'm sure quite a few of you belong to that. So thank you, and thank you for joining this evening. So that's Guy's and St Thomas, and a little bit about CITI. CITI is the Centre for Innovation, Transformation and Improvement, headed up by Lawrence Talon, the Deputy Chief Exec of Guy's and St Thomas. CITI was born out of a recognition that Guy's and St Thomas holds the capabilities to be a really progressive NHS trust, facilitating change and adopting innovation. The vision of CITI is of a hub. We house an innovation team and also an excellent delivery team who give on-the-ground support and deliver transformation and improvement projects. We know there's a gap between great ideas becoming real change, and we want to help close that gap by looking inward to encourage and enable our staff base and reaching outward to draw in and co-develop with the most promising and exciting technologies to benefit the health of our local population and beyond. So CITI doesn't just work in isolation. We have a whole ecosystem approach in line with the National Life Science Strategy, so bringing together frontline healthcare, innovation, academia and private capital. A key component of that ecosystem is our investment arm, KHP Ventures, and I know some of my colleagues will be here this evening. KHP Ventures is a joint venture with King's College London and King's College Hospital. It's a venture fund positioned uniquely to identify and invest in emerging health tech startups that offer the most promising solutions to NHS challenges, aligned with our clinical priorities. And the value is much more than just a financial investment. They have NHS clinicians doing excellent due diligence, looking at clinical validity and the realistic potential for integration in the NHS services, and also a portfolio team who work with their companies to optimise the use of technologies for the NHS. So the reason for this series and why we're here, the teams at CITI and KHP Ventures feel really privileged to be talking to and working with people and companies doing amazing things in healthcare. And we wanted a platform to be able to share some of those highlights. We want to explore the stories behind innovating in health, hearing experiences from innovators of their journeys from seeing an opportunity and creating a solution that can be introduced into the healthcare sphere. We want to encourage and inspire all of you ultimately. You guys are passionate about creating the best outcomes for patients, and we want this to be a forum to connect people with each other. So please do use the chat box, put your name and role, area of interest or work if you want to try and connect with people. So we want to get a sense of who else is here and maybe get some conversations started as well. So the agenda for this evening, I'm really excited to have 3 guests with me this evening again. We'll hear from each of them in turn. Do put your questions in the Q&A chat box, which is different to the normal chat box. If you put those questions in throughout the talks, then after I've spoken to all 3 of them, we can have a Q&A session and pose those questions to them. So it'll be great to be interactive with you this evening. So our first speaker is Stephanie Lerche. Steph is the lead pharmacist for digital innovation and technology and clinical lead for automation here at CITI. She's worked in the trust in various roles since 2017. She's got a strong background in electronic prescriptions and medicines administration. She's been involved in a number of development projects with the digital pharmacy team and the wider trust, including developing an electronic medicine ordering process to aid the ordering from critical care wards during the COVID-19 pandemic. Steph was a Digital Pioneer Fellow with Digital Health London, seeking to use the robotic process automation for the transfer of medication between prescribing systems, which laid the foundation for her role as clinical lead for automation here at CITI. So welcome, Steph. It's great to have you here. I know we'll be hearing especially about your Microsoft Power Apps program. But before we dig into that, there'll be a lot of clinicians or frontline staff here who are listening to this thinking, I'm clinical and I really love it, but I also want to do something more in the innovation sphere. So I'd love to hear a bit about your journey from pharmacy and taking that innovation. So tell us a bit more about that. I think you just need to unmute Steph.
There's always something, isn't there? There's always something. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak here this evening, and thanks Sarah for the introduction as well. So yeah, as Sarah said, so I joined the trust a number of years ago, and my first role was as a junior clinical pharmacist working in all of the areas across Brompton and Harefield hospitals, and I've worked in most of those clinical areas. As part of that rotational programme, you're exposed not only to clinical specialties, but also some other services as well. So, for example, medicines information or patient services. So just to give a little flavour of what it's like to be a foundation pharmacist. One of the opportunities I had was to rotate into digital pharmacy. And at the time, that was predominantly an EPMA team, so working with electronic medicines and prescriptions, and managing our electronic prescribing system there. And actually that was probably the first time that I sort of to open up into this sort of digital world that runs alongside clinical care. With that we ran, we still do today, quite a few projects around using the electronic systems that we have to make sure that we hit those big achievements, so the right patient is getting the right medication at the right time. So as Sarah alluded to, one of the early projects that I did was making sure that we could order medication efficiently for patients in critical care areas. When working clinically, I specialised in critical care, so actually this was something that was quite close to home at the time. The system that we use there actually doesn't have a facility or an ordering system to order medication from those wards. So pre-pandemic or pre-projects, so to speak, medication was ordered from wards very traditionally on pieces of paper, and let's say that pharmacist is at the bedside or they're in the middle of an important ward round, they then need to either find a colleague very quickly or bleep somebody or walk that piece of paper back down to pharmacy to make sure that they've ordered the medication that's urgent for that patient. So using Microsoft Forms, I implemented a process where that could be done electronically to save taking the pharmacist away from the bedside. That kind of work led into later projects. Subsequently, from there, we started working more and more with automation technology, and that was just the first flavour I've had of working in this space. The next sort of major project that I worked on was looking to use robotic process automation, which essentially is software robots which sit inside a PC, and they can be coded to do tasks that you would do with a computer with a mouse. So they can type and they can click, they can move information from one place to another in a very structured and logical way, whatever it is that you ask them to do. And what we were attempting to do is use that technology to move prescriptions from one electronic prescribing system to another. And that was a really interesting project, and opens up a lot of avenues of questions. So, for example, can we administer drugs against a prescription that has been essentially transcribed by a robot? So we had a number of really interesting clinical and discussions, as well as them being very digital and very tech focused discussions as well. So that was a pilot project that we ran for just under a year, and was very successful in the first instance, in terms of it could move prescriptions from one place to another, but probably slightly too complex to put into real life. That project I did as part of the Digital Pioneer Fellowship with Digital Health London, and for anyone looking to get involved in digital transformation, particularly from a clinical background, it's just a year's programme and something that I'd highly recommend. As clinicians, sometimes we're very, clinical staff are very focused in our remits, but actually this was a wonderful programme to sort of open up what it's like to work in digital transformation, the problems that you might come across, and network with other people who are very much in the same position as you, quite often coming from clinical or very specialist backgrounds, and are looking to start their digital transformation journey. So that's probably a little bit about me and how I've ended up working in automation. But yeah, would you like to touch on anything else, Sarah, or I can talk about power ups as well?
Yeah, that would be great, Steph. That is really cool to hear how you've done that, and thank you for talking about kind of the different resources I'm sure people will have. If they want to get in touch with you after to ask more about it, I'm sure they can as well. But yes, I'd love to hear a bit more about the Power Apps program you did, build your own apps. I was there at the kind of competition at the end. It was really cool to see all the apps people had made. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what that was.
So I'm going to try and share my screen and see if we have another tech malfunction, but give it a go. There we go. Hopefully we can see that, but do shout me if we can't. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the Power Apps project that we did. So I did this as part of my role working with CITI over at Guy's and St Thomas's. And in my role as clinical lead for automation, we're not just focusing on one particular automation technology. We were looking to see if we could incorporate other automation technology as well, and improve capability for those, as well as the robotic process automation I've already touched on in the earlier section. So what we're looking to do is we've got a vision to create a centre of excellence for automation at GST, and to support our colleagues in South East London as well. The two key tools that we use at the moment, so we've got Blue Prism RPA, and we've also built up a lot of capability, particularly on the Brompton and Harefield side, with using the Microsoft Power Platform and automated workflows. But one of the things that we wanted to explore a little bit more to see what else we could do was with a particular software they've got, which is called Power Apps, and I'll explain exactly what that is in a moment. To help us towards our vision, we have been going out to both clinical and non-clinical staff to seek sort of high value automations, or to find those problems that really bother them on a day-to-day basis, where we might be able to find solutions to those using automation technology. So what we were trying to do is we partnered with Microsoft themselves and an expert training partner called Hitachi, to give a selected group of staff access to Microsoft Power Platform. Microsoft gave us a free sandbox environment for 3 months, which is effectively just sort of like a demo environment. So it's completely safe. It's not linked to any clinical systems or any clinical software, and staff would be sort of given the free roam to have a go and develop as much as they could. They were given bespoke training from our expert training partner, and they went on to hackathons. So this was a new word to me from a relatively non-IT background, but it means a workshop in which people come together to solve their problems. So they hack the problems together, and they were provided with a number of resources as well. And what we were trying to encourage them to do was to focus on their skills development and trying to find their own solutions to the problems that they see at work. We tried to not limit creativity too much by really harping on about sort of limitations with the software or IG, to some extent IG implications, because we just wanted this to be a training exercise where people could feel empowered to solve their problems. And the stage that we're at now is any apps that we think do have potential to be taken into a live environment. It's now at this point that we are assessing them and making sure that IG is met, they're clinically, digitally safe, and that they've gone through any relevant IT governance as well. So what is PowerUps? For those who haven't met it before, it's a low-code, no-code development app solution. Effectively, it looks like this sort of the big screen in the middle. It looks like a PowerPoint, and you code it using formulas as you would put into Excel. So in theory, by saying it's low code, any person should be able to pick up and create their own apps with a little bit of help and training. PowerUps have been used in healthcare already, so this isn't a completely novel concept. So we've got two examples here, which I'll just I'll sort of focus on the Surrey one. So they created a PowerUp to help manage their flu vaccination. So this was actually pre-COVID. So they created two apps, one for staff to book their vaccinations, and then one for walk-in vaccinations to be managed. So I thought that was quite a clever thing that they'd done. Later, they managed to repurpose the app because they had built it themselves. They managed to repurpose it to help them administer COVID vaccinations. So I think that just shows how valuable it is to have, in some cases, to have in-house developed solutions to problems. So the aims for our project was really to grow a body of digital enthusiasts to push the software to see what could we do with it. Could we build anything that was substantial? To support people to solve their own ideas, and for people to have fun in doing so was really important. We had a real range of staff sign up from across the organisation. So we had 25 participants who saw the programme all the way through the months that we ran it for. They attended regular sessions, they went to several hackathons, and at the end of the project we had 12 ideas that had been developed that were presented back at our showcase event at the end. So this is just a bit of a timeline. So we launched around April, so we invited people to come and pitch their own problems, solutions that they would like to create their own app to solve. We then supported them with training, and then at the end of the programme we had a showcase where those 12 apps were presented back to the group. Microsoft allowed us to use their offices for the showcase, so that was also made it quite a nice event. So we had some presentations towards the end of the showcase, and we had 4 expert judges with clinical backgrounds to sit on the panel. We gave out several awards, and I think I just wanted to give you a little flavour of the types of things that were developed. So we had a radiology learning tool, which was our best all-round app. So that was for booking and managing classroom sessions in a way that was more bespoke to the tools that the radiology team have available today. Our most innovative idea was a locum access app. So that went beyond using PowerUps and utilised other sort of Microsoft's automation technology, which is called Microsoft Power Automate, to do some extra cleverer things outside of just the app itself. So that was a really interesting concept. And our standout participants was a clinical coding app to improve the rates of the clinical coding information that the team could get back. Again, very bespoke for the work that they do, but a really important development as well. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. So kind of where we are at the moment is we're trying to take some of these ideas and this fantastic work that people have done and put them into live use cases, doing it in a safe way, and we're working with our internal Microsoft 365 team to do that. And it would be great if we can get some of these apps live and show capability and prove the fantastic work that these have done and really do solve problems in healthcare.
That is awesome, Steph. I really enjoyed your showcase event and hearing all the different things that people had come up with. It was just great to see. There was a lot of fun. People were really enjoying it, and as you said, it's from no code or low code. People just who'd never created an app or knew anything about coding before to come up with those things, and such a range of people as well. So yeah, it was really cool. And if people have questions, we'll take those at the end. So our second speaker I want to introduce is Emilio Sanz. Emilio is the co-CEO and COO for Curable, which is the company behind the first medical device to obtain the CE mark for the automated diagnosis of obstructive sleep apnea. So Emilio has 15 years of building successful tech startups across Europe and Asia, and he leads the company's finance, strategy, operations, and commercial activities. Emilio is originally from Spain, but he's gathered his education and experience from all over. He has an MSc in electrical engineering from Paris, MSc in computer science from Madrid, and an MBA from here in London. So Emilio, you've got fingers in all the pies, and I'm really excited to hear a bit more about Curable. So please do tell us about the company and about the product that you've developed. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'll just give you a quick introduction about what we do, and then I'll cover our journey so far with Curable since the beginning. I'm going to share a couple of slides, which I don't know if, here we go. Hopefully you should see that. So we work on obstructive sleep apnea. For those who don't know what it is when you stop breathing when you sleep multiple times. An apnea event is when you stop breathing over 10 seconds. Some people do it 50, 60 times per hour, which is a real problem. And this leads to serious healthcare issues, typically hypertension, heart attacks, diabetes type 2, and there is data now that shows that it's linked to dementia, cancer, so it's a major risk factor for other conditions. The current diagnosis, the gold standard for diagnosis, is either in clinic polysomnography, which is very resource intensive, so it's restricted to very few patients. And the most common one is called cardiorespiratory polygraphy. It's the photo you see on the right. It's multiple sensors with cables. It works really well, but the challenge is that it's difficult to use, so the patient needs to be trained, typically by asking them to come to the hospital, and around 1 in 5 tests fails, and it has to be repeated. Another one of the problems is that it requires manual interpretation of the full night recording of the different signals, which takes a specialist around 1 to 2 hours per patient. And then finally, because of all these resources required, the waiting times in the NHS are typically 3 to 24 months, depending on the NHS trust. Average will be like 6 to 12 months in most hospitals. On the right, you see our system is a tiny sensor, which has become the first medical device to obtain the CE mark, which is the regulatory approval you need as a medical device for the automated diagnosis of obstructive sleep apnea. So every other device in the market requires manual interpretation of signals. We are the first ones that, thanks to our clinical evidence, we have been authorized to do that whole thing automatically. It comes out of Imperial College London after over a decade of research by my business partner, Professor Rodriguez Villegas. It has been clinically validated at the Royal Free London Hospital, where we compared our device automated diagnosis to the manual interpretation of the signals produced by the device you saw in the previous slide, and it was 150 consecutive patients, no preselection, so it was real-world conditions, and the results were what is considered equivalence to the gold standard in this case, which is positive and negative predictive values in the high 90s, so 95, 98%. We have got a number of awards. X Prize is one of the most important ones in our sector, and we are supported by NHS England, first by the NHS Innovation Accelerator, which is a program for promising technologies that can have an important benefit to the NHS strategic priorities, and recently with investment of KHP Ventures that was mentioned before, is part of the Guy's and Thomas and King's College. This is just a couple of photos of the device. It's a tiny wearable device. You attach it to the base of the neck. It transfers information to a mobile device, which sits, it can be on the phone of the patient, or it can be a phone we provide if they don't have a phone. And the data then is uploaded to the cloud and automatically analyzed, and a report is generated with all the clinical data needed to make a decision on that patient's pathway, whether they require treatment or not. So I want to stop sharing. Here it is, stop presenting. There we go, I'm back. So now about our journey. So we started, the technology development started a long time ago, over 10 years research. 6 years ago, we got the technology outside of Imperial College and we started the journey to take it to market. I built several companies in the past, in healthcare as in everywhere else. The main challenge is that it's impossible to truly understand the unmet need unless you are the one suffering it, or you have seen the product in the real world solving the problem, and you see what is happening. And you can only do it once you start having the first client. So that's one challenge. The second challenge that I typically face, and we faced as well with Accurable, was that it is not about the tech or the technology you have, it's really about the benefits, but it empowers clinicians and the system to do all the benefits, and that you have to prove and you have to document, because that is the real world is unforgiving, and things many times don't work as you expect. So everything evidence-based, both on the clinical efficacy and on any benefits you claim you have, you really have to back it up. What we did was, from the very beginning, we involved patients and clinicians to try to at least have a first version that was as good as it could be. Only the real world will actually help us refine it, but that really helped us create a very easy to use system that has continued improving, but that had really got acceptance by patients and clinicians. We went through the clinical validation with royalty-free. Selecting the right partners for that is very important. We decided to go and do one of the largest clinical trials ever conducted on sleep apnea, and really prove the same use case we wanted to enable in the real world, which was home testing with no training of the patient, like fully remote for sleep apnea and fully automated. And that's what we did in the pathway. Patients were given the system and not told anything about it, and they were supposed to follow the steps themselves. So we validated both the clinical efficacy and the usability. Thanks to that, we got the data published on the British Medical Journal Open, which is one of the top medical journals in the world, which gives us a lot of credibility in front of clinicians. And that was a step one that got us to have the regulatory approvals as an automatic test, first in the world. And then it was out proving the real world deployment benefits, which is another challenge. So on that one, from experience, what we did, we started small. We selected a few, by a few I mean 2, 3 sites and people, advocates, people who really believed in the benefits it could have and were willing to take on that journey with us. We started the first deployments, and we've spent the last year and a half. I mean, now it's starting to scale very quickly, but over a year, really refining and improving, because the product was there, but there's a lot of things that go into that service delivery and pathway and everything else to realize all the benefits that were possible. That took us over a year of iterations, and now we are at the point where actually the product is delivering on that. We have documented all those benefits. I mean, in our case, it is things like faster time from referral to diagnosis, a much better patient experience. You save a lot of time to the clinicians. It can be done fully remotely. There is cost effectiveness improvements. There's a number of things that we have been working hard with our partners to really build and then now be able to document. And that is the tipping point. Once you get your first few clients receiving the value that you promised, like really delivering on that value in the real world day after day, is when two things happen. Is those first clients or partners start talking to everybody else about it. So we are now experiencing a lot of people preaching our benefits to other clinicians without even knowing it. I got an email yesterday from a conference in Europe and somebody was talking about us. It's like, okay, amazing. But it took a lot of effort and time. And the other one is you are ready to actually go out and you have a product that you are confident can deliver on those. So that has been our journey, several years to get even from first launch of the product to actually scale up. So scale up is a term that actually you need to get there, and once you get there, you realize that there's what in technology they call product market fit. Your product, your service, your value proposition really delivers on the promise, and people really benefit from it. That's it.
Yeah, that's fab. Thanks so much, Emilio. Yeah, I think this device is amazing, and I love the way that you've done so much work on evidence base and getting it clinically validated. I think that as a clinician, that is, is so key. I was just wondering a wee bit about. I'll just ask you kind of one question now, and then we'll move on to Tony. Just about your experience of the NHS versus other health systems that you've been trying to introduce your device into. Has that been a difficult journey to break into the NHS, or anything different that you've needed?
So the NHS is great at being very clear about what they want, and if you are evidence-based and you have the right things, that you check all the boxes, adopting it is very painful to go through the process. So once healthcare, in our case, respiratory doctors are our key stakeholders. Once they say they want it, it's still a very long journey to go through information governance and go through procurement and go through all those things that are not every trust is the same, and some of them are extremely complex. It's a level of complexity that I do think could be simplified. They are trying with the standardization, but still there is a lot of complexity that makes an innovation like ours take, sometimes it takes over a year to go from the doctor wants it and wants to start using it to they can actually start using it.
Yeah, that was kind of my understanding, and I wondered whether you had a kind of key thing that had enabled that and made it a bit quicker, or any lessons that you learned that you could share with people.
You learn from the first few. So, for instance, one of the toughest processes is information governance approval. We are now approved in multiple trusts, King's College being one of them. The benefit is once you get approved once for one of the hospital's doctors units, then it is replicable. So in that trust, it works. We had to, in our case, maybe you can hire a consultant. We had to go through it and learn from the first couple of tries, which take much longer because we had to do many more iterations. Now it's a much easier way to do that because you know what is needed. You have gone through it several times, and that knowledge remains with you. But what I would suggest anybody going through those things is find somebody who has gone through that, who can tell you a few of the things you should know in advance that will save you months of, because one mistake means several iterations extra, and that means a few months that you waste of something you could maybe have known before.
Yeah, I think that would be essential advice for a lot of people. We'll really enjoy hearing it. Thank you so much, Emilio, and yeah, we will get questions to you later. So our last guest is Professor Tony Ng. Tony is the current director of Comprehensive Cancer Centre and the joint head of the King's College London School of Cancer and Pharmaceutical Sciences. In 2022, he joined GlaxoSmithKline as a vice president in oncology research and development on a part-time basis, and to help establish the GSK and KCL Translational Oncology Research Hub. So he combines clinical experience in treating AIDS patients with a fundamental immunology skills, and is a pioneer of molecular imaging in cancer. His experience of collaborating with mathematicians and theoretical physicists means he's well placed to bridge the interface between biology and AI and machine learning. So that is an essential component of what we'll be hearing about this evening, which is the Digital Biological Twin Project. So hi, Tony, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I'll hand over to you to tell us a little bit more about that project.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I should really, for compliance reasons, say that tonight I'm representing King's College London and not GSK. So what I say is really coming from the university aspect and the cancer centre. Maybe before I go into the concept of the digital biological twin, I should perhaps say something about the cancer centre, the Guy's Cancer Centre. I understand that there will be a lot of GSTT staff attending this series. I think we're very, very proud of our cancer centre. The cancer centre is not just the hospital trust, it's also university. It's safe to say that we have worked very hard together over the last 10+ years or even more to really work across the clinical academic interface So every Tuesday, for example, the leaders in both Guy's Cancer on the hospital side and us from the university side get together every Tuesday to discuss any strategic problems that we have. And you might ask, why do we need to work so closely together? You know, the whole point of academic research in cancer really ultimately for a clinically qualified person like me is to improve cancer care. And the Guy's Cancer Academy really, Guy's Cancer Center really has the strategy that we are going to detect cancer early, we're going to treat accurately, and we're going to follow up patients. And that is the mantra of the research that's going on within Guy's Cancer Center and working together with pathologists, academics, surgeons, you know, pathologists. We're trying to make it work. Now, the reason why we have to establish a collaboration with a biopharma like GSK, arguably one of the two biggest biopharma that make cancer medicine available for cancer patients, is that we don't have the resource or the firepower or the efficiency of running the sort of clinical trial with different powerful medicine. Now, one of the most powerful medicine is immunotherapy. So over the last, 7, 8 years, immunotherapy has transformed the way we treat metastatic cancer patients. If you take melanoma, up until the point, where these monoclonal antibodies that target the so-called immune checkpoint, very often we see, metastatic patient, they get the initial remission and ultimately they relapse. With immunotherapy, we're getting to a point where outside melanoma in solid tumor, which I specialize in, around 25%, so a quarter of the patient who have metastatic patient essentially survive for a long time. They become, I wouldn't say cure, but you basically they survive a long time, whereas previously having a metastasis is a death sentence. So that's really the clinical reason why we have to engage with biopharma, because they have the resource, they have the drugs, but they don't have the patients. So we formed this partnership, the Oncology Research Hub, really is to make the best of the both worlds. We have fantastic clinicians, we have a very large catchment population, and we look after a lot of patients. So, let me get to the point about the 25%. Let's say we have 100 patients coming through the clinic today. We have no idea which 25%, which 25 of the 100 patients will respond to these fantastic wonder drug called immunotherapy. So current tests to assign patient to immunotherapy is still insufficient accuracy. And we believe right from the beginning that if we can combine all the different genetic information, molecular information, imaging information, immune profile of our patients to characterize a patient both before treatment and on treatment, and if we have a way of using machine learning to try to help us to filter down to a few parameters that we can monitor the patient for, then we'll be able to identify patients who are at high risk. They're not going to respond to classical chemotherapy, or maybe they don't even respond to standard immunotherapy. We'll be able to follow them up with blood tests, other non-invasive tests, imaging tests, and also using the digital biological twin approach, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to create an AI model incorporating all those parameters, whether it's genetics or immune or imaging parameters or pathological features, to try to predict which patient might respond to which immunotherapy. There isn't one class of immunotherapy. There are at least 10 classes of immunotherapy at the moment. And, within biopharma, we are trying to combine different drugs. unlike HIV patients that are used to treat, you cannot combine 4 drugs and get away with the toxicity. You know, just about can combine 2 of them. So again, there's a problem mathematically, which 2 do you combine for which patients? And I think AI and machine learning have got to the point where we can sort of integrate the data and then come up with actionable markers. Then we can use that to guide patient treatment at the individual by individual level. We are not quite there yet, but but all the technologies that we need are there, right? So we are actually sitting for the first time in oncology thinking that we can be optimistic about the vision that we lay out for the cancer center to serve the patients that we treat, to detect cancer early, where patients do get diagnosed with cancer, treat them appropriately in collaboration with biopharma to give the right treatment to the right patient, and we monitor them with the tests that have come out of the AI model for that specific individual. And that's really the strategy for the cancer center. And I think that having worked with many biopharmas before I joined GSK, I know that was the right track to go down. You might then ask the question, where's the challenge? The challenge is actually having 2 jobs, right? You know, at the beginning, I had to kind of for compliance reason declare that today I'm King's College London representing the KCL opinion on this. But actually, on a different part of the week, I'm actually a GSK employee. So how do you combine the 2 lives together? You know, it's twice the amount of processes we have to get through. I think Emilio talked about information governance. We've got twice the amount of information governance and compliance to get through. Today, I actually saw 3 lawyers just to talk about all the compliance issues. So, but if we can get through that and we can combine the firepower of biopharma and the excellent clinical service we have and the excellent clinical, academic, clinical and non-clinical researchers together, I think we can make it the division really come true. That is to ultimately to serve our cancer patients and to increase that 25% to 50% to 75%, and targeting each individual patient and offer an accurate way of treating them and managing them, and so that one day cancer can be a chronic disease, just like diabetes. So I think on that I'll stop, and happy to answer any questions later on.
That is fab. Thank you so much, Tony. I know when I saw some of those numbers, it's really quite exciting. The personalization of cancer medicine is really what's going to happen in the future and really what's needed. So thank you for doing all that double governance. Thank you for doing all those chats with lawyers to make that happen. And I know a lot of people get nervous of the private and public sector coming together, but I think you've really shown, and we can talk more about how that is just getting the best for our patients, really, if we do that combination. So
can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
When I did medicine, which is a long time ago, right, we used to think that there's pharma and there's academic and there's clinician. My experience in the last 10 years is things have changed a lot, and right at the top of the leadership for some of these biopharma are senior executives who really care about patients, who really care about using excellent science to achieve what we need to do with the medicine we have. Of course, we need to, on the pharma side, we need to get approval for drugs, but, we begin to appreciate that excellent science leads to better approval. And ultimately, as a clinical academic, that means a better deal for our patients. Imagine you get into a clinical trial and that there's only 25% of chance of working, as compared to now you've got the digital biological twin, which characterizes your tumor, and you now know that you've got 50%, 75%, and that's individual by individual. I think it's going to transform healthcare, and I truly believe that it takes a partnership to do that. So it's no longer pharma and us, but working together.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And I know that collaboration has been really at the heart of what CITI's been trying to do, and outsource it to all those different partners. So thank you for that. I guess we have a few minutes, and just thinking about questions that we might want to ask some of you. Steph, I had a question for you, just a bit more about your robotic process automation and what else it's doing in the hospital. I wondered if you could answer that for me. But also, I think a lot of people, when they hear us talk about digital innovation, the healthcare space, are really worried about digital exclusion, and I just wondered how your experience of that was, Steph, in getting RPA into the hospital, whether you had barriers of people thinking it was too complicated, or it was adding another layer of something to their workload. So just kind of those two questions, and one about what other RPA you're doing, and the other about people feeling nervous of the new tech.
Thanks, Sarah. I think both really good questions, actually. I'll start with what we're doing, and then I'll move on to the digital exclusion. So we've got one process live at the moment in the trust. So this is a process which is processing, using robotic process automation to process home care invoices for pharmacy on the Brompton and Harefield side. Home care medication, for those who haven't come across it, they're particularly expensive, or specialist drugs which can't be prescribed by GP and community. So therefore the prescribing and the ongoing prescriptions for those remain with the hospital. And then those drugs need to be generally supplied by an external partner and then charged back to the hospital. Hence we have an enormous invoicing burden. So the bot that we've got processing those is processing 80% of the invoices that we ask it to do, which is an enormous figure, and we're saving around 20 hours per week of staff time processing those invoices. So that's something that we're really pleased and really proud of. The 20% of invoices that it's not doing are things that we've asked it specifically not to do. So for example, where the patient's name isn't spelled quite right, or where the invoice number doesn't quite match, the bot will refer those to a human for further investigation. And that's quite normal for an RPA process. It's something we're really proud of. That time has been repurposed to put back into the service, so staff can do other governance activities. So one thing that we've been particularly focused on is increasing the staff within that department to focus on no contact calls. So these are where patients haven't received their medication for whatever reason, either they weren't in or the company doesn't quite have the right address. So that's where they've not been able to make contact and the patient hasn't received the medication that it needs. So by saving time, we're looking to free up staff time so that they can resolve those problems. So really interesting. We've got a whole pipeline, a whole suite of ideas, and I could take up all of your time speaking about them. But just to name a few, we're building a new HR new starter process. So that will be processing the forms and then adding them onto the system. We're also doing a piece of work around data validation for elective recovery waiting lists, so tidying up those waiting lists so that patients can be seen in a more timely manner. So again, that's another process that we've got in the pipeline. Around digital exclusion, I think is a fantastic question, and it was something that we were quite conscious of actually when we were rolling out RPA, because I think it can be seen as a technology that is going to take people's jobs, or it might be something that you might see a lot of resistance to. But I think it's really important, and actually we've seen a lot of examples from across the NHS where actually it's taken away the tedium of roles and allows them staff to do higher value, more interesting tasks. So it's actually overall is seen as a good partnership to work abroad. The other thing that we've been quite conscious of and that we're looking to do more of is to make sure that we're engaging not with those individuals who are leading on the projects itself, but with the wider team who will be impacted by the technology, making sure that we have discussions with them so that there's no fear around a robot is doing this, and explaining how it works, and making them feel more involved in the process. So that's definitely something we're looking to do.
Oh, cool, thank you. Yeah, and I know you do have that whole pipeline, so sometime we'll hear more about everything that the RPA team is doing. It's fantastic to get some of those jobs done. So yeah, to let people get on to the kind of things that they really want to be doing in their jobs. So yeah, that's brilliant, thank you. Amelia, I was kind of thinking about a curable, and I was thinking about your device and kind of is similar to exclusion, but more like a kind of accessibility angle on it and how you made your device accessible to people for use in all different countries, different backgrounds, different ethnicities. What kind of thinking has your team done around that and kind of an equality of accessibility for it?
That was a big part of the product design. When you want that system to be used in an uncontrolled environment, which is the patient home without any training, you need to take into account the diversity of those patients. So it's easy in a controlled environment with a preselected group of 20 people to make it work. It's very difficult to make it work across everything. So before we did the clinical trial, we did a lot of testing in young people, very old, like 80 years old over, people with low dexterity in their hands, and then you have to design the whole product from the packaging to the mobile app. I mean, I'll give a couple of anecdotes, but the mobile app, if you follow the requirements from Apple and Android about the icons and the things you have to do, nobody knows how to use that above a certain age, because it becomes intuitive to you because you visit so many times. But a house or an arrow doesn't need to mean back or home. That is intuitive to us, not to most people. So we discovered a lot of things on that journey of really testing things with the real users and making sure it's both diverse. And we selected Royal Free Hospital also when we did our clinical trial because of the diversity they have. Is Camden Town and the whole of North London is extremely diverse in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds, and ethnic backgrounds, etc. So that was part of the question, which is how you design your product. And then beyond the product, you were talking about expansion into new languages. You need to already predict that those things will be required. So the technology you build, you need to make it easy to, for instance, incorporate new languages, incorporate new upgrades and things that actually will make these things easier. I wouldn't say we are very developed in that sense. We support 5 languages right now, but we don't have a lot of what could be requirements like we use videos, for instance, to make sure that people can understand things even if they don't. During the testing, for instance, we made sure that the images and the videos were enough. You didn't have to be a fluent reader of English to be able to follow the steps, but it's something we need to improve, like being able to translate this into smaller languages and making it more accessible for certain communities. It's a journey. I mean, you never stop in that journey.
Yeah, I can imagine that's going to be quite constant, especially if you start rolling out to all different places and changing the device. So thank you. And Tony, I guess my question for you, I was thinking about the potential culture clash, although you're saying it's becoming less, I think, between pharma and NHS or public bodies. I'm just wondering how have you found within teams that there are any human factors that of different mindsets when they came together that have impacted negatively on teamwork, or barriers that you had to overcome to bring teams together from those 2 different backgrounds? Oh, sorry, I think you're just muted still. I still can't hear you. Oh, I'm sorry that we can't hear the answer to that. I could hear you shaking your head. I can see you shaking your head, but that's okay. We can talk about that another time, maybe after this. So, but thank you so much to all of you for coming on. Just before we wrap up, there was another aspect of this that we were going to do, which is in this series we want to have an innovation surgery. So we know that innovation is both in health, it's exciting and it's challenging. As a frontline clinician, I've had years of experience in the NHS, and I know that we are really lucky to have a healthcare system which is brilliant and a lot of positives, but I also know that we all every day see potential for change and improvement. So anyone listening is because you're interested in an aspect of that change and improvement, and at CITI we're really aware of the ideas that staff had, as I said in the introduction, that probably daily for ways to improve our healthcare. What we want is to enable the conversion of those ideas into solutions. So there are many stages that come in that journey, from experiencing a problem, having an idea, implementing a product or process, and we all probably have different objectives. Some of us want to create a local solution, some of us want to have a national, international solution, but we're all driven to the same thing, which is improving the health of our patients and our healthcare system. So we want to introduce a feature in this series, which is a space for people who have an idea, no matter what stage and are encountering a challenge. So maybe you have a challenge and you're wondering, maybe there's already a solution out there for it. Maybe you know there's a solution and you're wondering, how can I get that solution into my workplace? Or maybe you've had an idea and you don't know how to get started with it, or an idea that you've already started and you're wondering, how can I get this commercially driven? So I'll be bringing guests on with expertise like our innovation consultants at CITI, and we want to hear from people about real life innovation problems. If we hear beforehand, then we can talk through some aspects of that on this series. So looking forward to our next event in December. We're going to have the opportunity at some point to have some in-person events. As we said, we want people to talk and network, and we just thank our three guests once again, and all of you for joining, and we will join in, we'll send out some information and some flyers for our next events. So thank you very much and take care.